Wong.
Running out the back door. Just kidding.
We'll take a brief pause.
I read with Janice like a month and a half ago. She's amazing.
Oh yeah, I'm
very
sure I
appreciative.
didn't do that.
No, you did. Actually, you totally did. You did an amazing job. You really
Well,
did.
my disclaimer is I don't speak, I have no Filipino to draw from, so
You were
I
amazing. She
hope
would
I
be
did that
proud of you.
justice.
Yeah, it was good.
Kenneth Wong, the author of A Prayer for Burma, which I just purchased on Amazon last week, by the way, Santa Monica Press, which was published by Santa Monica Press in 2003. He was born and raised in Rangoon, or Yangon, in Burma, Myanmar. He currently lives in San Francisco, California. His short stories and essays have appeared in Grain, Agni, and San Francisco Chronicle magazines. He is a frequent contributor to Link Asia, a weekly TV news program. He blames Shakespeare and Dickens for his insuppressible urge to write. His blog can be found at kennethwongsf.blogspot.com. Welcome, Kenneth.
Thank you very much. Has any of you ever been to Yangon or Rangoon, the capital of Burma? No? Your parents were from there, right?
Yes.
Did they ever tell you about what it is like to grow up there? Or what do you remember about what they say? What did they say to you?
So my mom grew up there in the 40s, and she said it's very different. The Shwedagon Pagoda's huge golden dome pagoda,
Yeah.
and now there's fluorescent neon Buddha all around it today, apparently. But that wasn't there back then. So, very...
I'm afraid that is fairly accurate. It is... Well, this is a country that has been under the military regime since 1960s until very recently when the country opens up. So in a city like Yangon, it's called Yangon, but it's also called in the colonial anglicized pronunciation Rangoon. The city has many different layers. Like you said, there is that temple, the famous pagoda Shwedagon. Shwedagon is one of the biggest glittering gold spire that sticks out in the middle of the city. It's the first landmark that you will see if you were to fly into Rangoon. It sticks out like a stick poking out of the heart of the city at the bottom. And if you get down to the level, you will see, because Burma was, for about 100 years, a colonial and British colonial region. You see colonial colonial architectures, you know, the crumbling buildings with porticos and verandas and arch and domes. The kind of thing that makes you think, like, if you stare close enough, you would still see the ghosts of Rudyard Kipling or George smoking cigars inside there. Except, if you look at those windows, what you would see actually is the sweat-stained T-shirts and the sarongs of the local Burmese people who have been camping out and living in those colonial buildings, and they flutter in the wind, in the sun, like Tibetan prayer flags. This city adds a new layer to it now that the country is opening up, because the neon lights that you talked about, it is a sign of the new economy when the country opens up and new investment from foreign countries comes in. So you see a lot of new hotels going up. So you see a dichotomy, a mix of two different, the ancient and the modern, where sometimes on the street you will see yellow-robed, saffron-robed monks sitting on one end, and young kids with iPods and goth eyeshadows and punk rock hairs and Doc Marten boots on the other side. Think about that image. Hold that kind of imagery in your eyes as I read this. This is a poem called Do Not Take Your Eyes Off Yangon. It's written by a Burmese poet named Ko Ywae. Ywae is actually the name of a river that flows through the middle of the village where the poet grew up. For some reason, the poet felt that it's quite appropriate to take a pen name that is named after the river that flows through the village. So, it's called Do Not Take Your Eyes Off Yangon. The tree that once gave you shelter is not in Yangon anymore. Not the remarkable building, nor the soccer field where we used to play. A condo mushrooms sprouted out. Not only are the streets crowded with cars, the pagodas are crowded with shrines too, my friend. Can't take your eyes off Yangon anymore. In the places where you don't know who's giving and who's taking, great walls are going up. The city is in bits and pieces, like a slab of meat snatched by a vulture. It is writhing on a butcher's chopping block. People go hunting for people in Yangon. People spoon feed people in Yangon too. Do not take your eyes off Yangon. If you blink, your neighborhood could be fenced in, walled up. Do not take your eyes off Yangon. Yangon protests often. Yangon blackouts are frequent. With his face split open, Lebanon Hill comes to Yangon. The Irrawaddy River, still barely alive, comes to Yangon. The farmlands that have been confiscated by force come to Yangon. The peace that is not yet peaceful comes to Yangon. The people's anxiety flows towards Sule Pagoda. Yangon is like a magician's handkerchief. Shake it once and white doves fly out. Shake it twice and fresh blood spill out. Yangon is modern, they say. Yangon is postmodern, they say. Yangon is beyond modern, they say. Look, she wears a short skirt with a slit. My heart is heavy, but I just can't look away. Thank you. Another poem that I translated by a woman poet named Thway Sagaing. There is a bit of an odd convention with Burmese authors and the way they pick their pen names. So let me see if I can explain. Thway is a single word name. It means blood. Sagaing is the name of the place where she grew up. You probably can imagine, for instance, Hemingway saying, Hemingway, Cuba, you know. That, however, is the way some of the Burmese writers tend to take their names. They have their name followed by the place where they grew up. Maybe they take after that tradition after some Spanish naming conventions like, you know, Don Quixote de la Mancha, Don Quixote from La Mancha. So, this is Thway Sagaing's poem. It's called The Poem I Wrote Today. It appears in an anthology of Burmese women's poet called Tuning, sort of like tuning a guitar string or tuning heartstrings, right? I'm always constantly in communication with Burmese poets, so I asked her, what should I say before I read your poem? What's the poem about? And she said, it's how I feel when it's how I feel because sometimes I feel like I'm living in the oppression of a male-dominated society. There's a lot of symbolism in Thway's poem, but that's actually a character of Burmese poetry in particular. Imagine, if you will, being a poet or a writer under a military regime, where any words that you say, or right or wrong, any kind of criticism that you make against the government could be used against you, and you could be thrown into prison or suffer something worse just for saying something like, I don't like the way the military government is running my country. Or it could be something that could be construed as meaning that, even though you don't mean that. So the Burmese poets and Burmese writers over the course of the year when they were growing up under military regime developed a habit of writing in deep, complicated symbolisms. So that gives them a room to say, if they were ever hauled into the military intelligence office for interrogation because they were suspected of saying something critical of the government, they always have a way out. They can say, I was just talking about flowers, so I was just talking about a boat that is crossing the river. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah? So that's why, if you hear this poem, there is a lot of symbolism, and it is because of that. The Burmese poets developed that special kind of skill to talk about things they want to talk about in symbols. The problem today is now that the country is opening up, you could actually talk about things directly, but they have such a difficult time talking about things directly. So they continue to speak in symbolisms, and it seems like you have to retrain yourself. The way somebody who learned to play piano the wrong way has to be retrained before they can be trained the right way to play the piano. At any rate, the poem I wrote today by Thway Sagaing. Happiness is the fish that slipped out of my net. Existence is a rolled up, wrinkled shirt. Boredom came to perch like a bird with wings still fluttering. Nights are a blank painting for me. The worries that formed thick clouds descended on uncertainties like scattered rain. Words could scarcely define the definition. These days, the tea I drink is flavorless, the disappointments are nameless, and the flowers are without flowery scent. When friends happen to meet, they console one another with, "It'll be okay." Those days are piling up. When I open up my inner self, the same old song came out, just like before. Only my wandering mind journeys on with no end, with no beginning. That's by Thway. Thank you. I'll read one last poem. It's from a trio of poems called Three Hidden Poems. The poet is named let's see here. Yeah, the poet talked about the poet is Myat. Yes, Myat. Myat in his original preface to the poem, when it appears in a Burmese literary magazine, he talked about this. There's a story behind it. He said, I wrote these 3 poems, and then I shoved them inside a book, and I forgot about them. Long afterwards, I rediscovered them. And it turns out that when I read it again, I like it so much, I gave it to an editor and says, here, these are the poems that I found hidden inside my book. Do what you want with that. And the editor published it. And it's published under the name 3 Hidden Poems. So there are 3 poems called The Hidden Sound, The Hidden Word, and The Hidden Color. I'm going to read the last one, called The Hidden Sound. The hidden sound. Once in the world was a hidden sound. No one could find that secret sound, not even in many centuries. The sound that lived in secret for many centuries was one day found by a musician. No, not quite. I'd have to say the sound found the musician. No? Don't be confused. Let me explain. This is how the two met. I don't mean to say the musician was looking for the sound and found it. Not quite. The sound, while hiding quietly for many centuries, got bored and depressed. So it went looking for the musician. That's why he found the sound without too much effort. Well, I hope I've cleared things up. That's how the musician found the hidden sound. Was it a blessing or a curse for the musician? I'm not sure. This musician, after discovering the sound, gave up being a musician forever. That's it. Thank you.